It's time now for a Scoop, our weekly conversation on international media. With trust in the press at a nadir, it's a critical eye on a critical profession. Today we look at political violence in America and the media's role. Even before the assassination of conservative youth activist Charlie Kirk, there was an unprecedented level of rage in American politics. Experts warned it could become a vicious spiral of political violence. After his killing, there was a wave of condemnation from elected officials, journalists, media personalities, influencers, and across social media. Here is late-night host Stephen Colbert.
I'm old enough to personally remember the political violence of the 1960s. And I hope it is obvious to everyone in America that political violence does not solve any of our political differences. Political violence only leads to more political violence. And I pray with all my heart that this is the aberrant action of a madman and not a sign of things to come.
He was not alone. Many other high-profile figures took time on air to offer their condolences and condemn Kirk's killing, but some sparked controversy in how they did it. In the immediate aftermath of a developing story, it can be difficult to make sense of the few facts on hand and try to connect the dots. Nonetheless, what political analyst Matthew Dowd said on MSNBC shocked many viewers.
Yeah, and again, to emphasize what you just emphasized, we don't know any of the full details of this. We don't know if this was a supporter shooting their gun off in celebration, or so we have no idea about this. But following up on what was just said, he's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions.
Dowd was fired after making those comments, and MSNBC apologized. Another fatal shooting provided a moment for some on the left to call for greater gun control or point to Kirk's divisiveness. On X, the progressive writer Wajat Ali condemned his murder, but also said Charlie Kirk was a horrible, hateful man who spent his life radicalizing young people to embrace their worst demons by targeting women, people of color, immigrants, and the marginalized. I refuse to sanitize him. Now, given that Kirk was a close Trump ally, many of the strongest and most emotional reactions to his death came from right-wing media like Fox News. This is Jesse Waters.
They are at war with us. What are we going to do about it? How much political violence are we going to tolerate? And that's the question we're just going to have to ask ourselves. Now, Charlie would want us to put as much pressure on these people as possible. This is unacceptable and has to stop. And it has to stop now. And everybody's accountable. And we're watching what they're saying on television and who's saying what. The politicians, the media, and all these rats out there.
And Kirk's death fits into a broader context. Politico ran this piece. A new dark normal of political violence still shocks the nation. It follows a surge in threats and attacks against political figures for this second summer in a row. Last month, a police officer was killed when a gunman attacked the CDC headquarters protesting COVID-19 vaccines. Before that, in June, a Christian nationalist murdered a Democratic state lawmaker and her husband in Minnesota. A second Democrat was wounded. Trump himself was the subject of 2 assassination attempts last year. It's not just high-profile targets, but ordinary people, too. In the first 6 months of this year, there have been 150 politically motivated attacks. That is already half as many as the 3 years prior, which was already a historic rate. Let's bring in our guest. Benjamin Ginsberg, a political science professor at Johns Hopkins University. Hello to you. Benjamin, you're also the author of many books. His latest came out recently, Politics by Any Other Name, A Bureaucratic Struggle, Lawfare, and Violence in American Politics. Benjamin, some of the data says the U.S. is seeing its biggest rise of political violence since the 1970s. And even then, most of that violence was aimed at property, not people, like we're seeing today. So for someone who studies this, was what happened this week surprising to you?
No, unfortunately, it wasn't surprising to me. Violence and politics have always been closely connected. Both are mechanisms through which groups struggle for power. And unfortunately, violence can be, at times is, a powerful instrument in political struggle. So violence is never too far below the surface. And I would add that in the United States, we do have a tradition of glorifying acts of violence. The other day, I saw a wonderful old Western movie in which starring John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart, and it was called "The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance," and it dealt with political violence in the Western territories. And the hero shoots the bad guy, the frontier gunman, and on the strength of his claim to have killed this fellow, then becomes a senator when the territory becomes a state. So this is the mythology that Americans grow up with, the lone heroic gunman. And unfortunately, this is a mythology in which angry, disaffected, mentally unstable people can make themselves in their minds heroic figures. They can become the man who shot Liberty Valance like John Wayne did. So I think that this is a background condition in the United States, the tradition of the lone gunman taking on the authorities and bringing justice to the country. Now, today, of course, the United States is polarized, and this polarization is exacerbated by the mass media. Years ago, as has often been pointed out, Americans watched 3 TV networks, NBC, ABC, and CBS. These networks tried to appeal to a broad cross-section of the American public. Today, because of technology, there are many, many, many media outlets, each one seeking to identify a niche. And this has produced not only fragmentation, but radicalization, because media outlets and bloggers and a variety of niche-seeking media figures try to outdo one another in appealing to niche audiences. And this produces a kind of radicalization of the American public.
Right,
People
Benjamin.
only want...
Sorry to step in there. Just wanted to ask you, after Kirk's death, we were waiting to see what Donald Trump's reaction would be. He's a U.S. president. But some responsibility goes on the media, too, because they shape the narrative and they can either create echo chambers of some of this extremist thought that we hear or provide more reasonable nuance. So there's an onus of responsibility on the media,
Absolutely.
even if they have a niche audience.
Absolutely. The media does bear responsibility, but very few media outlets accept that responsibility. Instead, if you watch the American media yesterday, today, it is casting blame. The conservative media point, as the clip that you showed just before, Jesse Waters calling upon righteous Americans to step forward and do something. And on the left, the media somehow has constructed a narrative in which obviously this was, kind of a Reichstag moment, implying that this was done by the right as a kind of pretextual event, as when the Nazis burned the Reichstag, in order to justify further action. So instead of accepting its responsibility, the media just throws gasoline on the fire. Why do they do this? Well, unfortunately, it's business. This is how you appeal to an already radicalized audience that wants to hear a more excessive version of what it already thinks.
Yeah, and if you look at some of these polls coming out, Benjamin, I'm sure you've seen them, but they are really staggering. I mean, in the latest poll by YouGov, taken after Kirk was murdered, 72% of respondents said violence is never justifiable. But if we go back to April, Rutgers found that 55% of people who called themselves left of center said it was at least somewhat justified to murder Trump. Why and how did political violence become more acceptable in America?
Well, this is an excellent question, and I think this is the key to understanding the turn that American politics has taken. Many people equate violence with the right. the Nazis, they're violent. But I think that if I'm going to predict the future, which I professionally try to do, I would look over my left shoulder, because the American left has become increasingly outraged and hysterical because Trump has, with some unexpected success, attacked the governmental and social and cultural institutions that maintain the power of the left in America, governmental bureaucracies that are, generally speaking, left of center in their programs and policies.
Are you saying sorry to interrupt, are you saying the American left would be more likely to carry out a politically motivated attack than the right?
I do say that.
But this would be supporters, it's not the elected officials that are espousing the violence.
Though some elected officials have come close. A number of American elected officials have been saying, we haven't been doing enough to stop Trump. We need to really get in the face of these MAGA Republicans. We need to push back. And what is that but a call to be more obstreperous? And it's in effect a call to action. And again, to get to the point, the left sees itself as under siege. Trump is cutting off money to left-wing organizations, Planned Parenthood, for example. Trump is firing bureaucrats. Trump is closing agencies such as USAID, Voice of America, other agencies that support the causes of the left. And he's doing so and getting away with it. The American left is hysterical and asking itself, what can we do? What can we do to stop this? And I think this is why we can expect to see more violence on the left in the coming years. Now, the right and left are equally capable of violence. Mm-hmm. Okay? It's not that left-wingers are more violent, but they're in a position where they begin to see violence as their only option.
Well, here, let me ask you a question about Benjamin, just real quickly. Sorry. After Charlie Kirk's death, there was a website created. It pledged to, quote, expose Charlie's murderers. It's asking people to offer tips about people who are supporting political violence online. Does a website like that do something to help or fan the flames of such violence?
Well, obviously it fans the flames, and it's intended to. The word expose, that's an action verb. Do something to hurt the people who killed Charlie. I mean, we're in a period when violence is being normalized on both the right and left. Remember, the left was more than guilty of violence in the past couple of years. The Black Lives Matter riots, the riots on college campuses. Though the media treat these as protests.
But some of the violence was from a heavy-handed security response in those instances. Well,
that's arguable. I mean, the violence at Columbia University began with an encampment which was designed to be provocative, and then a seizure of university buildings, after which the police were called. But you're right. I mean, the action and response go together, but I would suggest that we've had a couple of years of violence on the left, and Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, the encampments and protests. That's all suggests.
Benjamin, sorry, I want to get one more thought from you before we end the show. We're running out of time really quickly. Thursday was the 24th anniversary of 9/11, a time when the country was united in the face of foreign terror. Now it seems to be being torn apart by domestic terror. Am I exaggerating?
No, the country is deeply, deeply divided. People are frightened, and I expect the level of violence to increase over the next year or two.
All right, Benjamin, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your answers. Benjamin Ginsberg, a professor of political science at Johns Hopkins University. And that brings us to our quote of the week, and it comes from the late Charlie Kirk himself. He said, quote, "You can tell a lot about a person by how they react when someone dies." Kirk said that back in 2016, shortly after Fidel Castro died, but his relevance still being felt today. Thank you for watching this episode of Scoop. Please stay tuned to France 24.